Okay, so we'll start. It's Parshat Pinchas, and the story that we're not going to do tonight is really at the end of last week's Sedra, where the story goes, as you will remember, that the Midian wanted to overcome Israel, couldn't do it by might, by the sword, so they employed a tactic of sending in their beautiful girls, and the beautiful girls seduced the men or many of the men in Am Yisrael, and they carried with them small idols, and the condition of intercourse was that the Jew bows to or acknowledges or the idol, and there was a very bad that was a very bad spiritual energy which caused a great plague, and the prince of one of the tribes was having a relationship with a Midianite princess called Cosby, and Zimri, took his spear and speared them both through the genitals and put them up and hoisted the spear and put them up in front of everyone. And there are many sikhs on that story, and many questions of a halakha called kanoim poigim boy, which means under certain circumstances you can take the law into your own hands, but the boundaries to that law are very complex, and there are many sikhs on it, and we've done it many times in the shir over the years. That's not what we're going to learn tonight, but I'm mentioning it because you'll see that there is a relevance in that to this. What we're going to learn tonight sounds like a really boring piece of law, and you would wonder how anyone could think that there would be a relevance to them in it. And when the Rebbe takes this and chews it up, you will see that he's really talking about every Jew individually in terms of their conscious choices. And it's fascinating to see what's buried so deeply in meaning, in nuances in Torah. So let me just go to the beginning of this issue. I'll just give you an overview of where we are in history. 39 years ago, there was Koirach's revolt, which we learn about every year, a couple of Sidras ago. And fast forward 39 years, and they're about to enter into Eretz Yisrael. And in order to enter Eretz Yisrael, since the object of entering Eretz Canaan and making it Eretz Yisrael was to settle it, so the land needed to be distributed amongst the Jews, since the Jews hadn't been there till now, and since from now on it's going to be the Holy Land, it's going to be paradise, it's going to be where Jews are going to live if they behave forever. Who gets the land? Did the richest guys get it? The strongest guys get it? The best looking guys get it? Who gets it? So there's an elaborate system set up, which the Torah delineates. And also in tune with that is the question of inheritance. So there is an incident that happens in this week's Sedra, at the beginning of the Sedra, which I hope you're all familiar with, but just to keep us on the same page, there was a man called Selofkod, and he had 5 daughters and no sons. And he died, and the question was, what was going to happen to Selofkod's share of Eretz Canaan, making it into Eretz Yisrael? And I need to take a quick detour to explain this, that the laws of inheritance in Jewish law, in Halakha, are not the same as ours. In the Western legal system as we have it today, as everybody knows, the devolving of property is supposed to be through the choice of the owner of the property when he dies. I say supposed to be because that's a whole tapestry on its own. Because if you believe in Hashgacha Pratis, as we all do, and if you believe that Hashem is driving everything and running the world, then obviously property is going to be passed to where it belongs, and therefore whether it's done through a will and everybody pretending to believe that they're in charge of that and God's not, that's one way of doing it. But in Halakha, that's not how it's done. In Halakha, the land devolves through the male, and that's of course caused a huge amount of criticism, Bible criticism, with the politically correct lunatics but why I say the political correct lunatics and the criticism is that they don't understand the social structure behind that was that the men looked after the women. They weren't footballers who came home and beat the hell out of their wives and had to have AVO orders put against them. A man had to look after his wife and his daughters, and women who the idiots wanted to say were second-class citizens. In fact, the Rebbe explains that women are spiritually superior to men, and the women were treasured, and because they were treasured, it was the man's obligation to look after his wife, look after his children, look after his mother, if his father died. And in order to give him the wherewithal to be able to fulfill that obligation, he inherited the money, the land. The eldest son inherited a double portion, but what I'm explaining is that the devolution of property was through the male. So Selofkod had 5 daughters, and Selofkod dies, and Moshe's dishing out the land according to the formulas that Hashem says with the goyrel, and we haven't got time to go into it. But so the daughters come to Moshe Rabbeinu and say, "It's not fair. I get it. If I had a brother, an older brother, the brother would get the money and the land and would look after us. But we haven't got an elder brother. We haven't got a younger brother. We haven't got any male in the family. My father's just died. We've got no nephews, and there's no one. So we should have the 5 daughters should inherit my father's portion, and we'll divide that into 5 between us. What do you think, Moshe?" So Moshe says, "I've got to ask God." So the women say, "Go ahead, please, ask him." So Moshe goes off, asks God, comes back, and he says, "God agrees with you." God says that it's only fair that, after all, I run the world, and if you don't have a father, I know something about that. And I'm telling you that if you don't have a father and you don't have any brothers and you don't have a male in your family, what you say is good sense, and you should inherit the land, and so they do. Now, when they do that, when they ask the question of Moshe Rabbeinu of what to happen, and when Moshe Rabbeinu says, "I don't know, I'm going to go and ask God," they say this: our father died not because he wasn't part of the rebellion of Korach. He didn't sin with those guys who were with Korach, and they died. But our father didn't die because of that. Our father died because of his own sin. Now, I've just got to watch the time with the detours, but I'll just share this with you quickly. Tzolofchad is probably the man who was gathering sticks. There's an episode where he was gathering sticks on Shabbos, and he was killed for that, for breaking Shabbos. That's a very difficult piece on its own. Just suspend disbelief for the moment and accept that the halakhas of getting the death penalty for breaking Shabbos are very, very, very rare. You need witnesses, and you need warnings, and it's a whole Ganzermeister that goes for hours. And to cut a long story short, the Talmud and the Midrash seem to agree that Tzolofchad, if it was him who was gathering the sticks, he did it l'shem shemaim. He did it out of a good motive to show the Yidden how important Shabbos was. And I haven't got time to go into that with you at the moment, but just accept for the purpose of the conversation that when the girls asked Moshe Rabbeinu, not the girls, the women asked Moshe Rabbeinu the question, they said, our father wasn't part of the rebellion with Korach. He died for his own sin, and I'm explaining to you what his sin was, the reason that he died. So the Rebbe asked the first question: are you serious? Moshe Rabbeinu has asked a question on halacha. It's not a question on Kabbalah. It's not a question on the age of the earth. It's a question of halacha, of law. He's asked a question of law, and he says he doesn't know or he doesn't remember, and he goes and asks God. Since when do we ask God questions of law? Do you know what the halakha is about questions of law? You have a question of law, you go to the Beis Din. You go to the Beis Din, you ask rabbis who have smicha, who know how to learn, who know how what the halakha is, who can learn the Gemara and learn the Shulchan Aruch, who know it backwards. There are plenty of people like that. Plenty of people. I had a teacher once who told me that his father in Warsaw used to sit next to an old guy in his shul, in the back of his shul, and the old guy in the back was poor as a church mouse, and every day before davening, he would say 2 pages of Gemara off by heart. And he would complete the Gemara every 3.5 years. That's what happens if you do 1 blat a day, it's 7 years. He used to do 2, and every 3.5 years he'd finish and start again. Didn't have a sefer. Did not open a sefer, right? Now, there are plenty of people in Am Yisrael's history at least as clever as that. You can imagine when the Rebbe was Boki. I mean, there are lots of rabbis today who are lecturing on the circuits who are Boki and Shas. How can Moshe Rabbeinu say, you've got a big question on halakha, I'm going to go and ask God? What do you mean you go and ask God? You know what the halakha is when you don't know the halakha? You go to court. There are rules for interpreting the law. There are 13 principles of I think exegesis. I don't know how you pronounce that in English, but exegesis, maybe. Exegesis. And we say them every morning in the Carbonus section before we start davening, that those 13 principles come with the following instruction. When God gave the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai, part of the oral law was there are going to come times when you don't know what to do, either because there's scientific developments. I'll give you an example. When the telephone was invented, the question was, could you use a telephone on Shabbos? And nobody went to ask God. What they did is they went to Rabbonim and they asked Rabbonim, and if a majority of rabbis certify a psak, din, that becomes halakha. That Torah is as sacred as any other Torah. So the question is that if these women asked him this question, what he ought to have done, if he didn't know the answer himself, let's pretend that he didn't, if he didn't know the answer himself, he goes to a Beis Din and he asks the question, he asks the psak. And when he gets the psak, he tells them that, and they obey it or they don't obey it. It's up to them. But from Yidden, obey a psak din from the Beis Din. So what happened here? Why did he go running to God? And how is it possible that he went to go running to God? So there is a principle that the Torah, why is it that you don't go running to God? Why is it that you go to a Beis Din and you have the 13 principles of exegesis? Because we learn that once the Torah was given, it's given on earth. And it has to be interpreted on earth, not in heaven. The Torah is not in heaven, the Torah is on earth. That's an absolute binding principle in halakha. So, and I'll give you some examples. There's an argument between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua in the Gemara, and it's about an oven. They have an oven, and they're arguing about the kashrus of the oven. And it's a difficult sugya, which I won't bore you with. They were, just leave it, that they were arguing about the kashrus of this oven. And Rabbi Eliezer, for whom much of the Torah paskins like him, he said that it was, I can't remember whether he said it was kosher or treif. And Rabbi Yeshua said the other opinion. I think that Rabbi Eliezer said that it was. It doesn't matter. I've forgotten. That's not a good thing for a teacher giving a shiur. I have forgotten. But one of them paskined that it was kosher. One of them paskined that it was treif. The one that paskined one way was Rabbi Eliezer, and he said, "Look, if you don't believe me, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell that carob tree to move. Carob tree, move." And the carob tree gets up and moves. So he said, "What do you think of that?" Rabbi Yeshua's not impressed. So he says, "All right, you're so stubborn. What if I make water run uphill?" And he says to the stream that's coming downhill, "Water, go uphill." And the water turns around and goes uphill. Rabbi Yeshua says, "No, it's wrong. The oven is treif, or the oven is kosher, whichever." So finally he says, Rabbi Eliezer says, think of this, "I need a bus coil from heaven." A bus coil means a heavenly voice to paskin. And out of the heavens comes a heavenly voice to say it's which way it was, kosher or not kosher, whichever it was. And he looks at Rebbe Yeshua, and Rebbe Yeshua says no. He says no, why not? Because the Torah is now on earth. It's not in heaven. It's not subject to miracles. It's subject to halakha. You want to know the halakha of this? Let's ask a Bezdin. And what the Bezdin answers is the Psak Din. And that Psak Din becomes the halakha, the law. That becomes Torah. And the Torah is here on earth. Now, if you understand these Gemaras, you have to ask the question, didn't Moshe know this? If Moshe knew this, what does he go, somebody says to Moshe Rabbeinu, what do we do with inheritance? And he says, this is a deal. I'll go and ask God. Where? That's not our tradition. That's not our learning. Our learning is that the Torah is on earth. Look at the examples of Rebbe Yeshua and Rebbe Eliezer. So, I now want to talk to you about something that I hope won't be contentious, especially for the people listening on the tape. I'm a lawyer, I'm a religious Jew, but my parnasa comes to me through the vehicle of law. But I tell you, and I'm not even going to put allegedly in front of this the way they do on the news, I'm telling you that lawyers have an intrinsic conflict of interest. Why? Because if you come to a litigation lawyer and you ask him, you tell him your case and you say you want to sue Chaim Yankel, and what are your chances of winning? He is going to answer you to the, let's give him the benefit of the doubt to the best of his ability, and he's going to answer you like this, that if he sues Chaim Yankel for you, he's going to make $300,000 in fees. Right? That's what it costs to go to court today. If he says, no, you shouldn't sue him, he makes zero. That's a big test. Maybe you pass that test once at 20, at 30, at 40, but sooner or later, if you've got to marry off a daughter and your kid's got this problem and that problem and your wife's sick and whatever it is, it takes a very, very big man not to yield to that inherent conflict of interest. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I'm not putting down any lawyers in particular. I'm not putting down the system. I'm saying that it's a reality, that if someone is earning $300,000 if he says this, and zero if he says that, it's very difficult not to believe that he's influenced by the $300,000. Give you another example. A bone, what do you call them? What are they called?
Bone marrow?
Bone injuries, knees, and
Knees, yeah.
what do you call those guys?
Orthopedic.
Orthopedic surgeon, right? You go to an orthopod, and you say, do I need a new knee, right? And if I have a new knee, what are the chances of it healing? Now, this man is going to earn $50,000 for this operation, and zero if he doesn't operate. So you hope that if he's a decent person, and he's a man of credibility, and his reputation is a good reputation, you hope he's not looking at the money.
This is what Herschel's going through.
Yeah. You hope that he's not looking at the money. This way he makes 50 grand, this way he makes nothing. And you think, he's a champion, he's my hero, he's a doctor. And because he's a doctor, he's not going to be influenced by this and he's going to do the best for me. Is he? I don't know. I'm just flagging to you that there is such a thing as a conflict of interest, and there is such a thing as bias. Now, conflict of interest is at the high end of the wrongness scale, But as that scale goes down, there's bias. And we all have bias. It's natural. How do we know? It says in Hasidus that God is a partner in our bias. What does that mean? It means that you and I were born to certain people in a certain time, in a certain environment, with a certain level of wealth, with a certain level of beauty, poverty, whatever it is, and all the psychologists will tell you that it's not only nature, it's nurture. So you're influenced by your genetic structure, but you're also influenced by what happens to you. We all know that what happens to you is Ashkoga Produce. So each one of us, especially if you're honest, and if you're not honest, you better start thinking about this, because what are you doing here otherwise? That every one of us is a product of our own biases. And we've been educated to have those biases. We've been educated to have those biases by nature, by our genetic structure, but also by our experiences. So if it comes for you and I to judge, the problem that you and I are going to have is that we've got a conflict of interest. Because why? We have a bias one way, and you're asking a question that's cold fact. Do I do this or do I do that? And unless you're superhuman, which you're not, you are going to be answering with a question of a bias. Come back to that in a minute. You can overcome it. I'm not saying that this is a terminal situation. We're going to talk about how to overcome it in a minute. But the first thing you have to do is to recognize that you have a bias. You know, if two people are waiting in a queue, I had a guy called, I won't tell you his name. He died a long time ago. His name was Mr. Major. He had a cake shop in Double Bay called Major's Cakes. He was a lovely man, a Hungarian. He was a really frum Yid until the Holocaust. He came to Australia, threw his film out, but he was very wise and very, very nice man. Once he came into my office and I was stressed because we had a whole lot of stuff going on at the one time. And he sat down at my desk and he said, "Mr. Kremnizer, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Yes." He said, "How important will this be in 50 years?
Yeah.
Right?" And he said, "Trust me, think like that for the rest of your life. How important is this going to be in 50 years? And I have to tell you, it was a big help. It's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Anyway, this man, Mr. Major, why was I telling you about Mr. Major? I was telling you about...
Major impact on you.
Major is Major, you know?
Huh?
Major is Major. Like
Yeah, he was Hungarian. We were talking about being impartial and not being affected by... now I remember. So he said to me, "Mr. Kremnizer, life isn't fair." I said, "Why not?" He said, "I'll tell you, if I'm serving in my shop and in comes one beautiful woman and one not beautiful woman, who do I serve first?" And the reality is that at whatever level of consciousness or subconsciousness, whether you give in to that or you don't give in to that, don't tell me it doesn't have an effect. It is an ingredient in your choice. And you should know that in the Talmud, there are a series of examples given at the high watermark of this. For example, there's a story in the Gemara about a rabbi who needed to cross a bridge, and there'd been a big storm and the bridge was very muddy and very unstable, and he got on there and he's holding onto the ropes that are on the side of the bridge, and they were wobbling, and this guy comes and helps him, gives him a hand and takes him across the bridge. And later on that day, the guy who was crossing the bridge was a rabbi and a judge in the Beis Din. And later on in the day, the guy who helped him across turns out to be one of the litigants. He didn't know it at the time. But this guy was a litigant, and this guy was the judge. And the judge refused to be on the bench. Why? Because he was
Biased.
He was biased. He regarded that as being sufficient for him to be prejudiced. Now, this is a very strong moral man to do that, because presumably he didn't get paid if he didn't sit on the bench that day. But whatever it is, now there are a few stories. There was one rabbi, what was his name? Mar Ukva. This Mar Ukva was also a dayan in a Beis Din, and he was walking in the street again before anybody knew who was who, and a feather fell on his kapota, and this guy dusted off the feather, and later on he goes into court, and this guy goes into court, and he sees him in court, and he took himself off the case, because he said that to some extent he was already biased in favour of the man who did him the favour. There are lots of examples. I'm sure that there's another one where somebody spat from a window upstairs, and the spit landed on the guy's coat, and somebody tried to help him so that it wouldn't be disgusting, that he goes, because Talmud Hokum is not allowed to have a stain. So this guy meant well, and he wanted to take the stain away, so he took the stain away with the spit and had to have that on his handkerchief or cloth or whatever it was. And again, when he came into the court, the judge, the rabbi, disqualified himself from hearing the case. I want to give you a deeper example, in case this isn't getting home to you, but I'm sure it is. But let me take you through some, because the Rebbe gives these examples. There was the Beis Din determines Rosh Chodesh. I don't know if you know that. Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows that. Today we have a fixed calendar, and it's no problem. But before, it was on witnesses seeing them. What's that all about? Every 2 or 3 years we have a leap year. Why? Because there are 365 and a quarter days in the solar calendar, and there are and there's 259 in the lunar calendar. So there's a shortage of 9, whatever the maths is, 9 days or 10 days or whatever it is, so that every 3 years, let's say, it's another month. Let's say Jewish month, I'm leaving out the exact maths. Jewish month is 30 days, let's pretend, it's not, it's 29, something, but let's say it's 30 days, and there's 9 days short, one calendar to the other, so every 3 years, you've got an extra month. So we have a leap year every few years, and that we add another month to the calendar, and that becomes Adar Sheni. Yeah. So, and that's done according to a Beis Din. It's done as a matter of halakha. Right? Now, that in that Beis Din, there's a law, there's a halakha, that a Kohen Gadol can't sit on that Beis Din. Did you know that? Why not? Why can't he sit on that Beis Din? He's supposed to be the holiest Jew there is, the Kohen Gadol. He is the guy who goes into the Kodesh HaKadoshim once a year only, one place a year, one time a year, and he's going to be responsible for the whole of Am Yisrael's atonement for that. It's a huge responsibility. He's got to be a really holy man. If he isn't a holy man, he dies that year. We've been through that many times. He used to go in with a string or a rope or because if he died in there, nobody else can go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so they had to pull him out by this. And he can't sit on a Beis which determines whether there's a leap year or not. Why not? So it's explained like this. The Kohen Gadol's job on Yom Kippur is to go to the mikveh 5 times. Did you know that? He has to go to the mikveh 5 times. Now, we're not talking about the mikvehs of today, which are chlorinated, heated, with a super comfortable, enjoyable experience. We're talking about a real mikveh. That's a hole in the ground with freezing cold water in it. I don't know if any of you have ever been. Of course, you've been to Israel, but there's a mikveh in Sfas,
the Arizal.
The Arizal's mikveh. Yeah. I've had the misfortune of thinking it was a good idea to go into it when I was.
I didn't go in.
When I was, it's freezing. It is so cold.
December.
I can't tell you how cold it is. Okay, so if this extra month that is intercalated means that. First of all, let me explain the halakha of this. We're doing a lot of halakha, but we need this to get to where we're going. The main reason that we intercalate an extra month is that it's a mitzvah for Pesach to be celebrated in spring. And if you didn't do that, as then 30 days, there, suddenly it'd be the middle of winter. So in order to make Pesach come out in spring and conform with the halakha that it must be in spring, we intercalate them. So what's that to do with the Kohen Gadol? So the Kohen Gadol isn't allowed to sit on that Beis Din when it's determining whether there's an extra month or not. Why not? Because he goes to the mikveh 5 times on Yom Kippur, and it's much colder 1 month earlier than it is 1 month later, or the reverse in Israel, right? It's much colder. He's much less comfortable. So in case he has his own agenda of being cold, even if it's subconscious, he is not allowed to paskin because he's got an interest. He has got a bias. Tell you another thing he has to do. Most people don't know this. In the Kohen Gadol, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, has to be barefoot. Did you know that? Can't wear socks. Has to be barefoot.
No sandals.
No sandals. He has to be barefoot. And he's standing on stone. And the stone's cold. So 1 month earlier, the stone is more cold. So if the stone is more cold, he might have a bias, even if it's subconsciously. He's not allowed to sit on the Beis Din. That's how careful Jewish law is in halakha, to keep separate your agenda from what you're being asked to do. Okay, now I have to take you through the Rebbe's thread. This bias can also be deliberate. You can have a deliberate bias. I'll give you an example. Before I give you the example, I've got to explain something. Everything in Gashmias, everything in physicality is a mirror of what exists in spirituality. The fact that you have a head and a body is a physical manifestation of the fact that in your psyche and my psyche, we have intellect and we have emotion. The intellect that we have is in 3 parts, Chokhmah, Binah, and Das. We haven't got time for this now. and the rest of it are six levels of midos, of emotion, and malchus, which is also, let's say, 7 levels of emotion to keep it easy. So you've got 3 intellectual, 7 emotional. That's why your head is about 3/10 of the length and breadth of your body. Now, emotion, we're not going to talk about intellect tonight because that's too long a story, but let's talk about emotion just for a minute. Emotion, unknown to people who don't learn Hasidus, is directional. What does that mean? It means that certain emotions, the emotions that you and I have, all of them have direction. So Chesed, kindness, has an outgoing direction. When you have Chesed to your child, you want to express to the child, you want to nourish the child, you want to give to the child. But when you see your child going wrong, God forbid, and you want to punish your child, you're not punishing your child because you want pleasure, God forbid, from punishing your child who you adore. You're punishing your child because you wanted to learn to be a decent human being. But then, in your state of what's called gevura, which is the other side of it, that is a taking emotion. And although there are 6 levels of emotion in Malchus, those 6 levels are divided broadly into those Hesed emotions and Gevura emotions. Now, people who know nothing about what we're learning at the moment, and what we're learning at the moment, I have to tell you, should be taught to little children in school so that they don't live a life of confusion with this. Let's take a simple thing that everybody hears all day and watches all night on television: love. Right? I'm in love with so-and-so, I love this, I love that. And they use this word love with reverence. And I tell you, they haven't got a clue what it means. Most people have not got a clue what it means. Why? Because love has both those ingredients of Chesed and Gevura. I'll give you an example. If you love your child, you want to, no, let's take the other one. Let's say, I say, I love chocolate. I love chocolate cake. If I love chocolate cake, am I really saying anything about what I want to do for the chocolate cake? I want to consume the chocolate cake. I want to eat the chocolate cake. I want to eat it up so that there's no chocolate cake. I want to destroy the chocolate. Is that love? I want to destroy the chocolate cake, and that is love, but it's love for me. It's love for my gratification. Right? On the other hand, when you say, I love my child means I want to give to that child. I want that child to grow. I want that child to prosper, and that is an outflowing direction to that emotion. And if kids aren't taught this, and most kids aren't, and I certainly didn't know it when I started to learn Hasidus, you go and see a movie like Casablanca. Can I assume that everybody's seen Casablanca?
Yeah.
You go and see a movie like Casablanca, and the issue is he going to take and consume the love of his life, or is he going to put it on the plane? Right? And every school kid that, in my generation, or university student that saw Casablanca, is totally confused. Why? Because the whole movie's describing his gevura, for his wanting to consume the chocolate. That's what the whole movie was about. And then in the last minute, instead of consuming the chocolate, he's a parent, and he wants the best for her. Now, are they mutually exclusive? No, they're not mutually exclusive. The directions are mutually exclusive, and there are certain situations where both, you and I know, both are required. You have a wife that you love, you want to eat chocolate, but on the other hand, you want her welfare. So there are situations where both go together, but you need to understand that there is a Hesed component and a Gevura component, right? Now, just as it's critical to know that, it's critical to know, once you've understood that and you've understood that you have a bias, because we've agreed that by Ashkoka Protis you have a bias, the question is, what do you do with that bias? Let's go back to the example of Hesed and Gevura. If you understand your Hesed and Gevura for your wife, you are going to know that if there is a piece of chocolate cake on the table and there's only one left, right? And you want it. You want that piece of chocolate, but you think your wife might also want it. So if you go to function in terms of Hesed, you're going to say, darling, take it. Got time to tell you a famous example that Rabbi Serabransky in Melbourne Fabring with this example. You go to $1,000 a plate dinner, and the dinner comes and it's nice. You have entree, you have main course, but you really want a good dessert, and they're serving this fabulous dessert, this chocolate blamande, blah, blah, whatever it is, and the waiter comes and you say, I haven't had dessert. And the waiter says, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I'll come back to you in a minute. He comes back to him and he says, I'm sorry, we haven't got any of the dessert left. Mm-hmm. And you saw that down the other end of the room, somebody had a second serving of that dessert, right? And you've paid $1,000 for this. So how do you feel about that? You begrudge him that. That is real Gevura now. You really begrudge him that piece. Now, just to show you how personal perspective can be and how critical perspective is. Let's say that you realize that the person down the other end of the room is your granddaughter, and your granddaughter's having a second helping. Now, do you want the helping, or are you happy that she's? And it's the same love that we're talking about, same love for the same chocolate, but one has a direction one way and the other has the direction the other way. Okay. So let's go back to you're married and you've got one piece of chocolate cake on the table. And if you are going to react in terms of your Hesed, you're going to offer it to your wife. You tell her she should have it. But if you're going to operate in terms of your Gevura, you want it. So now you can't just say, I want it. I mean, what sort of a crass person does that?
50-50.
You say, well, that's too clever. That spoils my examples. But if you say, what if you are just fundamentally biased? What if you fundamentally think, you know what? You asked me yesterday, are you putting on weight? And truthfully, you're getting a little tubby. And she's horrified. So he said, but darling, have the cake. Now she doesn't want the cake. Right? So you've structured it that she doesn't want the cake. And all of this is going on. And to an outsider, they don't see this. All they see is that you've offered her the cake and you've ended up eating the cake. Or you've offered her the cake and she's ended up eating the cake. But the dynamic of what's going on is you can't share with anybody because they're not privy to this. And that's how Hashem created us, that we have these levels of consciousness. And our job in our 50, 60, 70, 120 years that we're alive is to marshal those and to identify those drives and those energies and marshal them, to elevate them into goodness, not into selfishness, not into gratification, not into manipulation, not into lies, but to grow them. And what it's explained by the Elder Rebbe is that when you do that, really, genuinely, you grow to heroic levels, and no one needs to know about it. No one's interested. And if you tell them, they were not going to believe you anyway. If you tell them about the struggle with this piece of chocolate cake, they're going to say, what are you talking about? Who cares? But we learn that it's absolutely critical. Now, where's all this going? So, running out of time. L'chaim. What happened when the Tzlofchod's daughters came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, our father wasn't one of the men who was in the Korach rebellion. He died of his own sin, and because he's died, we have no land to inherit. We think that we should be able to inherit the land. What do you say, Moshe Rabbeinu? So Moshe Rabbeinu understands this, that he's been bribed, subconsciously. They didn't mean it. They're tzaddikus, right? But what did they say to him? You have to listen carefully to what they said to him. Our father was not one of the men in Korach's rebellion against you, right? That's like the rabbi with the feather. That's like the guy crossing the bridge in the mud. They're saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, our father wasn't one of the rebels against you. He died for a different reason altogether. Now, what's the answer? So Moshe says, I have to dismiss myself from this. And he can't go to a Beis Din because at this point he is divided. We haven't got time for this, but Yisro came and said that he had to judge people, and he put up a whole system of delegation, which I can't go into. And this was his province. This is something that he had to answer. But he couldn't answer because he's a judge in his own cause. That is forbidden in Jewish law. You can't be a judge in your own cause. You can't have your own agenda and listen to it. And the problem is that you and I make 100,000 judgments every day, and we make 100,000 judgments every day with our own agendas. So the adventure, and it's a long adventure and a long, hard road, is to work with yourself to understand where your vested interests are and discount them. And the journey is to learn to discount them, one after another, after another, after another. So if you really don't want to go to shul this morning because you want to sleep in, you don't say, I don't want to go to shul this morning because it's Tuesday. You say, I don't want to go to shul this morning because I want to sleep in. I tell myself the truth. When you've got the truth, then you do some work with it. Is it worth going to shul or not? Whatever but you've got to start from the truth. You can't start from the baloney. You can't start from the lie. And the problem, and why is it that we have a rule, there's a halakha that says you're not allowed to don lekav, unless it's you don lekav skus, which means you have to judge favorably. What does it mean, judge favorably? If I see you doing something wrong, I'm not expected to be an idiot and say, oh, really, he's doing something he doesn't know, he's doing something no. Maybe he does know, but you have to understand that he's had his hashgacha pratis, you've had your hashgacha pratis, he's had his tests, you've got your tests, his life's different to your life. And judging is a very dangerous and very rare thing that you do. But in terms of your own value judgments, you've got to make those value judgments. That's what life's about. But then you've got to start with, is your bias working against you, or are you recognizing that bias, isolating it, and growing your life by dealing with it honestly? And it's a big ask. But that's why Moshe Rabbeinu went to ask Hashem. There's no, who goes to, how many times do you go to court? And the judge says, just a minute, I'm going up to my chambers and I'll go and ask God. What would you think of that, judge? So we have to judge more carefully. L'chaim.
You've got to take a vow on the bottom.
Huh?